So welcome to people that are new to the group today. We have an open policy that people can join us through members of the public and organisations that are free to come along, so welcome to you. The purpose of today is to bring you up to speed with the period, with the project and where we're at since our conversation in June. But then also to explore views on the next steps as we move into the prototyping alpha phase of the project, both in terms of what we're doing in that, and then also how we're changing the way that we communicate and engage with the public and with other stakeholders as part of that. And I'm delighted to introduce our Minister for Digital and Public Finance, or Public Finance and Digital, I should get it right, is Kate Forbes, MSP, and she's joined us today to share some views about the project and kind of the wider work that we're doing here in Scottish Government, and then also to hear views and opinions from all of you. And she can stay till about 10:30 or something like that, which gives us plenty of time to have a very useful conversation. And then what we'll do is we'll have a break and then go into the details about the Alpha project and the communications engagement after that. And we'll finish by 12:30 today. So that's the plan. And the first thing that we'll do today is just get an update on the project and invite Susie to go ahead and do that.
At the last meeting, we had quite a lot of feedback about the program so far. In terms of the specific feedback for the workshop, I think the open government approach was welcomed, and that work has continued. We've continued to blog. We've published the papers for this meeting and so on. There was some feedback on how we could better communicate our content and specifically how we could explain how we're working with service providers and so on, and how we could provide some more explanation about the Alpha. Since the last meeting, we've recruited a head of comms and engagement, who's Maria Wade, who is leading on comms and stakeholder engagement for the programme specifically. And we've tried to put some things in place, including hopefully a less technical pamphlet to explain the approach to Alpha that's been tabled today. And there was some comments specifically around the service design and user involvement in that. That's something that we plan to take forward within the Alpha programme. And there were comments on ensuring that privacy is part of the Alpha design. There's some brief commentary on that within the Alpha paper, but again, happy to hear more comments on that, and we can try and respond. So we've been trying to take on feedback on those comments, just to say that those lines of dialogue are still open, and we'd still love to hear the feedback and your views. Since the last meeting, there's been lots of work internal to Scottish Government to get us in the right place to take forward an Alpha prototyping piece of work around identity assurance. You'll hear more detail on that from Mike, and we've had the paper table today. We're taking forward a partnership with Open Identity Exchange, a membership organisation, a non-profit entirely focused on identity in various sectors. And we've been developing the work with our service providers. We've looked together at our timetable. The outline is now looking at kicking off the Alpha itself next month. Well, next month is tomorrow, so in November. And that running for about 6 months. If we get the go-ahead to move to a beta where we do the testing stage of the programme, we're looking towards September, autumn 2019. Potentially that could lead to the first live service in 2020. But that's an outline, and with the project management agile approach we're using, that there is some fluidity in how that would develop. The expert group met last month to look at the approaches that we're taking towards the Alpha prototyping stage. And we've been talking to our minister also about programme 2, and we're delighted to have her along today to speak to us.
I am delighted to be here with you this morning. As Susie said, I've had an update, but there's nothing quite like actually coming along to one of these stakeholder groups to get a sense of where we are with this project. And it's a vitally important commitment. Many of you will be aware, in September, the First Minister published her programme for government. We were just talking about it earlier today because somebody was reading it on the train here. And in that programme for government, she pledged to work with stakeholders and interest groups to develop a common public sector approach to online identity assurance. And that commitment is hugely important to people up and down this country, because in developing an approach for individuals to safely and securely identify themselves online, I think we achieve two things. We make life simpler for them, hopefully, and we also open up opportunities to improve and change the way that public services are delivered in Scotland. And with that ever-increasing need to deliver public services in this way, and I'm very mindful of that as the Minister with responsibility for digitising our public services, and somebody who's often in receipt of correspondence asking us to improve the way that we deliver public services online. With that objective, it's vitally important that the public can have a reliance on a safe and secure and reliable approach to identity assurance. And we know that privacy is becoming more and more of concern to the public, whether that's because of big issues that make the press, or just because of a growing understanding of the way in which online services of all types work. And so it's important that privacy is protected and personal information is kept safe and secure in the way in which we move to increasingly delivering public services online. And that's where the interests and the expertise in this national stakeholder group, which includes privacy interest, third sector and public service providers, is vital to help us to shape the design, the direction and the prioritisation of this particular programme. And it's fundamental to ensuring that the emerging approach is one that meets the needs of people who use public services. And at the end of the day, it's that end user that is of paramount importance. So I hope that those of you who have been before have found these meetings useful, and that you will continue to engage with this meeting and beyond to shape this work. And I'm interested to hear your views, your comments, your thoughts on progress so far and where you see the direction of travel. As I said at the very beginning, I've obviously had regular updates on this work, but there's nobody probably as important as you are as the stakeholders when it comes to shaping it. So thank you very much for inviting me along, and I look forward to hearing the discussion.
I'm delivery lead on the project, so dealing with all things discovery, Alpha, so plans for Alpha being the major thing that I'm going to talk about. Our digital first assessments last Thursday, still waiting for the results for that. Hopeful that that should be pretty good. We had 100 slides in that slide deck and presented from 10 o'clock till 2:30. So if any of you have got a train at 3, looking pretty difficult. No, I'm going to run through it very, very quickly over the next half hour. Try and give you the briefest indication of direction that we're going. Focus a little bit on the kind of OIX collaboration and the shape of Alpha, but then open it up to questions really and see what issues you foresee or what particular questions you have about the direction of travel. But I'll kick off and get through these as quickly as I can. So, won't go back to basics. Aim at the programme, develop a common approach. We have done this today. Obviously, safe, secure, effective, proportionate, easy to use and accessible. Those are the principles. We talked a lot about principles. Those are the principles that we are trying to maintain and adhere to. High-level timeline. We kicked off late 17. The red line is where we are now. So we've done discovery, we've done a bit of post-discovery work, filling in some blanks that we felt we had about service provider needs. And we are expected to kick off Alpha next month. That's as much as I'm going to tie it down. What we did, we've covered this. I mean, service design and the discovery report delivered by Snook. Since the last stakeholder meeting, take the July 2018, we knew we had more work to do on what service provider needs were. So we've held workshops, sense-making sessions, mainly with Social Security Scotland, Disclosure Scotland, Scottish Enterprise, 2 local authorities, North Ayrshire and North Lanarkshire. I think that's the major ones. So particularly looking at their types of use cases for this and figuring out exactly what their needs were likely to be of an identity solution. OIX. This is the kind of the elephant in the room. Because it's not something the Scottish Government have done before, working with Open Identity Exchange. But they are a worldwide, non-profit, cross-sector membership group, as it says there. There is a lot of industry experience and knowledge on identity in the OIX membership. And we are trying our best to leverage as much value from that as we possibly can for as little money as we possibly can. So while we have joined the OIX, that has cost us £5,000, but we're getting a lot of value for that. And then the work that we are going to do over the next 6 months, yes, there's a cost attached to that, but it's not the value of the inputs that we are going to get from the companies that are involved. So I'll go into that a bit more detail. Innovative. We use innovative. We do not use unorthodox. It is an innovative approach. In a standard alpha, we typically contractually engage with one supplier, provided by a competitive tender. We lay everything out very clearly up front, and then we build that and come to the end of it and many times say, no, that didn't work, actually. We didn't really figure it out particularly well at the start. So what we are proposing to do is prove the concept. We've talked previously about the conceptual architecture, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. But we're going to try to prove that that works. Now, to be able to do that, we have to convince an awful lot of other companies to become involved, and they have to see the value in it. So there's an awful lot of toing and froing that goes on that I'll talk about to sell this concept to the types of organisations that need to be involved. So that means that we are not as certain right now about exactly what the alpha looks like as we would normally be in a standard approach. But we think that the benefit that we get from that vastly outweighs them. So, what we did. August, first workshop, 25 companies, a large variety there. It doesn't matter who's there. It's the fact that there are 25 companies. We gave them homework. We gave them a form to fill in, and they took that away, filled it in about a bid for their involvement. Some of them didn't return it, the dog ate it. It's my dog, Alfie. So the yellow ones that are highlighted there, they came to the initial workshop, found out about what we were doing, and felt, actually, probably it doesn't fit with what our aims were, so we won't put in a bid to be involved. In the meantime, other companies became aware of what we were doing through digital blogs, through outreach that we were doing. So the green ones, they were ones who weren't at the first workshop, but then who came along for a second workshop and put in bids to be involved in the alpha. So you can see there's still a significant number of companies interested in what we were doing and wanting to be involved. So this was the workshop. This was the homework that we were given. The important bit, though, is we asked them, what level of involvement do you want to be? Do you want to lead the project? Do you want to be an active participant? Or do you want to be an observer? So we're trying to gain a better understanding of how we build something together with lots of different companies being involved. That's what came back. you'll see that some people came back saying, we can do the whole thing. We have the solution to do everything. So Mindex, for example, you'll see a large green line right in the middle. Others, for example, Post Office, came back saying, we are an identity provider, so we sit in that space, and that's how we would like to be involved. So we took all of that, and so there's some that are there for standards, like T-Scheme, Factor, and others. So we took all of that, and we placed it next to your conceptual architecture, and this is all the types of companies that are involved in OIX. And you basically try to do this sort of thing. Now this is not the actual alpha. This is illustrative purposes only. Yes, can we get the lights on? Ah, there we go. And it's looking at the particular skill sets that each member has and how well they would fit into that conceptual architecture, and trying to figure out how we build something that will prove the conceptual architecture that we've come up with. So, second workshop, September. 14 companies, 6-hour-long workshops. Didn't last six hours. We had 2 streams, so 3 hours long, and that's what came out of it. 6 proposals, looking at trust anchors, alias IDs, a lot of stuff in there that I can go into detail, but what's important is these were the 2 that had the greatest potential. We had a meeting afterwards, reviewed what came out of it, and it was talking about testing the use of a portable digital identity across 2 different services, and the predicting vulnerable groups check. What am I looking at here? I've got it in front. So, after that second workshop, one-to-one chats with lots of the companies, saying, this is our proposal, these are the 2 streams that we would like to look at in greater detail, and we would like you to form part of that alpha prototype fulfilling this role, and seeing whether we can line everybody up. So that was October, many chats, many iterations. So this is where I went old school on the digital first assessment and actually put stuff on walls and drew on it. Won't do that here, but that's what we came up with. So you're going to struggle to see this, but let's see if I can point out. We've got conceptual architecture, we've got relying parties. What we propose is we will have Social Security Scotland and the local authority for the North Lanarkshire as the relying parties. The use cases that they will be fulfilling, I'm not to call that child DLA, I'm to call that DLA child, isn't that right? And council tax, single person discount. The integration and abstraction layers, the hub basically to give this whole system the privacy that is so required, it would be SiteKit. We are a Microsoft shop, so quite small, probably need a little bit of help backing from Microsoft, but Microsoft are willing and able to do that. And then identity providers. We have a traditional verified type identity provider in the post office, and we have a Scottish identity provider, My Account, Improvement Service. Improvement Service have just entered an agreement with Yoti, Personal Data Store, to look at how we would use personal data stores potentially to store a digital identity. We also have in here Mindex as an attribute store. And this is why I said to Alex, this is the direction of travel, because what we are proposing to do is, yes, have some type of attribute additional that we could possibly add into an identity that might come from a traditional identity provider. So for example, Social Security application might need to prove that someone is who they say they are. We are able to go to the post office and say, yeah, that's John Smith, no problem. We've said to Social Security, eligibility is up to you. We can't really necessarily help you with eligibility. But hang on a second, what about if, over here in the attribute store, you have done some sort of application with a local authority that has proven your disability status to get blue badge? Then why would we not go to that attribute store, get that extra information and pass it back to help with that eligibility? So that's the sort of thing that we're looking at trying to do there. Over here, is the second stream. Originally, the second stream was going to be quite similar to the first stream in that it would actually be a proof of concept. The one-to-one chats that we had with the organisations that were going to make that stream up surfaced some difficulties around access to test systems or production systems. We'd be very clear that we want to use only test data, no live data in this at all. Experian, for example, that we're going to sit in this sort of space, could only offer us access to their production system on a very limited basis. So we pivoted, I think is the expression that you use, and the second stream is now much more desk-based, but looking in much greater detail at standards and interoperability, because that will be the thing that will make this stand or fall. And there are lots of organisations named there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that will be the extent. Because if it is a standards and interoperability piece of work, we can potentially involve a lot more people. So, for example, I've already had chats this week with DWP, who have a lot of very good experience in their work on universal credit, where in using Verify they were only getting 37% of applicants through that process and then had to do face-to-face work to get their levels of assurance up to a high enough level to process their application. A lot of that work is very, very useful to us because it will fit with this stream of work. So, proof of concept, as I've said, Social Security Scotland Authority, DLA Child, and it comes to tax discount. We're looking at applicants applying for one and then reusing their ID for the other, so that we're proving that reuse. Possibly also applying for one and only requiring a lower level of assurance and then applying for the other and having to uplift that to be able to access that second service. Standards and interoperability, as I said. Now, the scope really is down here at the bottom, because it's baseline identity standards, so particularly looking at gap analysis. So at the moment we have a Verify system which has very clearly defined standards, GPG 44 and 45 to get. What is the difference between what we're trying to do in Scotland, or what we already do in Scotland, and what those standards are? How do we get an equivalence between what we're proposing to do and what is already done, so that we can enable that reuse and potentially go, to use a Scottish identity south of the border? Because if it has an equivalence, why would it not be accepted? Extended identity standards. If we are doing face-to-face work and trying to get people through, how do we make sure that that work meets those standards? GPG 44 and 45 really talks about production of documents, such as your passport, your driving licence, proof of your address for the last 5 years, and some financial information. And if you can produce all of those online, you're there, you tick the box. If you can't do that, how do we meet that equivalence? How do we meet those standards by doing face-to-face work and very quickly be able to create a digital identity that people can then use for subsequent access to that service or access to other services? Waivers, that's really talking about the fact that this is the problem with Verify had. We'll make a really high level of assurance, and you've got to reach that really high level of assurance before you can access any service. So what happened? People thought the benefit is not enough to go through that large amount of pain in gaining a digital identity. So is there a way that we can manage to introduce a waiver system so that if you're only accessing a service that doesn't require that level of assurance, fine, but at least you're accepting that risk. You know what you're getting. And commercial models. This is really the most difficult bit that we're going to find in this whole process. The commercial model as it stands at the moment, for example, for Verify, is a new person comes along, wants to prove who they are, you're sent to the post office do their checks, and say, yes, this is John Smith, thank you very much, that'll be on my 50. And then when you come back in, having proven who you are previously, and you're just saying, is this John Smith? Yep, it's John Smith, thank you very much, 4 pence. And that's the commercial model. And everybody has met the standards, therefore liability is not a difficult thing to deal with. If in a system like this, you have individuals coming in who are quite difficult to, who find it difficult to prove their identity, and it goes to the post office says, nah, it's all right, couldn't do it. And the process then takes you to a face-to-face bit of interaction between you and the individual. And that face-to-face interaction meets the standards, brings you up to the level of assurance that you need as a relying party. And then we update the post office to say, yeah, we're now happy that this is John Smith. What's the commercial model now for those costs? Post office can't charge us £1.50 for verifying that John Smith is John Smith. They didn't. We did it. We did the work. We did the face-to-face interaction. If we then come back to a second service as John Smith and say, I've got an account with the post office coming back saying, yeah, that's John Smith. How much do we pay for that? It's the public sector that did the work to prove that identity. So how much? Is it 4 pence? Is it 2 pence? Is it 1 pence? Is it an ecosystem thing where we accept that everybody's put a bit of work in, therefore that it shouldn't actually be a cost attached to it? That's going to be the difficult bit, the difficult negotiations with lots of these companies. What is the commercial model that will make this work for everyone? But that's just trying to show the complexities. There's all sorts of issues in there and all sorts of potential extra bits of functionality that you can add in. So, for example, let's just take the green line that's in there, which talks about a complex form. So you have a relying party with a complex form, doesn't really matter which relying party it is. And it comes down here and it gets to an identity provider. And that identity provider goes through lots of checks with the individual to say, who are you, what's your address, what's your previous addresses, what's your financial footprint, and it proves who you are. What then comes back up in this direction from verify is, yes, we have verified this person. When you get back up here to your complex form, the relying party goes, excellent, right, could you give us your name, your date of birth, your address, and it's a really, really poor user experience that is given. How do we parcel the information down here that is put in and pass it back up here to autocomplete the form? And what are the privacy implications of doing that? Because up here you're going to have to ask the individual, are you happy for this to happen? Because there's a significant amount of data that's travelling here. So that's just one of the types of issues that are in here. Another one that I talked about earlier was passport office. At the moment, the passport is kind of gold standard of identity proofing. At the moment, it's available down here. An identity provider at the post office has got a document checking service that you can go to, and it would use that to verify that the passport details that are put in are real passport for a living individual. Passport Office are now talking about, PCMS are talking about, and Passport Office are doing the work to open that up much more obviously and transparently to many other, especially public sector bodies. So where does that sit? Does it sit in an identity solution layer here, or does it sit up here? If Social Security Scotland are able to actually go to Passport Office and say, is this your real passport details? Is that where it sits, or should it sit with a common identity service? I think it's probably sensible for it to be here, but these are the sorts of things that we need to look at. And the difficulty around this is that this isn't going to be available until about September next year. So how do we work that into an alpha in stubbing the data somehow to make it possible to test it? So that's where we are now. November, kick-off workshop. At the moment, that's looking like the week beginning the 12th of November. We're going to try to get all of those OIX members together along with, and this will come as a news to Social Security Scotland, along with Social Security Scotland, to Scottish Scotland and other relying parties in that week. Hope your diaries available. And try to figure out exactly how we do this. Where do we base it? Who are the individuals from the OIA companies that we're going to have access to? How much access are we going to have to them? Who brings what technically to the party? How do we join those things together? And that's the final slide that I have, which talks about the team that we're putting together to be able to do that. So we already have our own user researcher. We're having a service designer join us in December. We already have 2 business analysts, one dealing with the Alpha and one specifically dealing with building a business case. Architect we have on the team already. Product manager we're going to bring on board because with the large number of parties involved in this, we're going to have a product owner from Social Security, a product owner from Scottish Scotland, a product owner from local authorities, all on a part-time basis. How do we get someone to push that forward and keep the momentum going? So we're going to bring somebody in internally to do that. And testing. Given that what we are doing is taking components which already exist and trying to join them together in a new, innovative way, testing is the biggest part of the Alpha, really showing that this will work. So we're taking somebody on full-time to fulfill that role.
So what's our main aim here? Well, obviously it's a stakeholder group. Here, our aim is to engage all stakeholders. In particular, we're looking at engagement with privacy groups and members of the public. So citizen engagement is going to be really, really key moving forward. In fact, Susie said something really interesting that I think is worth repeating, that stakeholder involvement could make or break this project. We're not looking at the stakeholder group and our stakeholder engagement as an afterthought. Every single part of this process should be designed with and for all the users. So I wanted to make that clear right at the beginning. It's also quite an exciting program because I don't think there have been many programs that have been designed under that remit. So it's something innovative and something we should take the chance to really get on board with. Okay, so our objectives. One of the things that we have to do is to support the program plan. Now my slides did touch on some of the program plan objectives and it's mentioned in the Alpha and plans you've had before. But broadly speaking, it's to support the common approach. It's to look at the fact that it's designed with and for members of the public, which we just spoke about. It's to make sure it's private, to make sure it's safe and secure and effective and proportionate and accessible. And finally, from our point of view that we're serving citizens, we need to make it have really good value and we need to give it flexibility so that it can change. So really that's what we're saying when we're supporting the programme plan. So the second objective is to ensure a fully consultative and collaborative approach. And this is really key. We're not asking you to sit here and watch these things in isolation. We actually want you to get involved. We really want your feedback, we want your interaction, we want your ideas. And that's one of the reasons we're holding these groups. And now we're coming into Alpha. This kind of engagement is going to deepen and get richer. So we're really hoping to build relationships here. Okay. The third one, obviously, was that we need to be informed and understand stakeholder needs and requirements, which again, this group is going to be so key in bringing to the floor with us. So our goals, really want to raise awareness. When we say OIA, who really knows what that means? When we say OIX, who knows what that means? With outside this group. So we want to raise awareness of the programme, our aims, our goals, our ambitions, how it's going to help, the benefits it's going to bring to citizens, and also start looking at the things that we can do to help people access it. We also want to understand the needs of the stakeholders in order to shape the programme, and we want to secure buy-in. Now, buy-in's a bit of a kind of marketing word. I haven't gone the right way. Here we go. We want to secure buy-in. So buy-in's quite a kind of marketing word. Really what I'm looking at here, when we're talking about buy-in, is confidence and engagement in the programme. So people really understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and want to get engaged and believe in it. And this is something, again, that's going to be critical to the programme. And the way we're going to do that is working from grassroots, ground up, with engagement all the way forward. So it's actually quite a big ask in that respect. So how are we going to do this in terms of breaking it down? So this diagram is in the information that you got through. And actually, I must say this paper pack owes a huge debt of gratitude to Jess Roscoe, who pulled the paper together while I was on holiday in Wales. So I can't take credit for this lovely diagram. However, some of the themes we're covering, how do we go about raising awareness? Well, we talk face-to-face with people. That's an absolute key one. You know, real people, real opinions, real information, real impact. So we make it open. So we talk about our blogs, proactive publication of the papers, no surprises, nothing hidden. Anybody wants to know about the programme, it should be a quick Google search and they're there. All the information should be public. And public show and tells, invite citizens and public together to come and see what we're doing, invite dialogue. As the Minister said earlier on, invite challenge. This is going to be key to what we're doing. We need to be challenged because we need to make it work. And we need to make sure that in terms of privacy groups, in terms of citizen interests, when we get to the point where we're going from alpha to beta, there are no surprises. Everybody's got confidence in the system. Everybody knows exactly what we're doing. And everybody has influenced that journey together. So I am kind of rushing here because I'm aware we're a bit tight for time. So we identified 9 key stakeholder groups within our discussions within the team. So, I mean, this is not exclusive, but it helps for us to break it down into sections so that we can create bespoke messaging and speak to groups in the right kind of language for them. So, members of the public, citizen interest, try saying that, the regulators, which is a given, public service providers, now that's going to include government agencies, our Scottish Government internal stakeholders. Now, I know that sounds a bit strange probably to external stakeholders, but we also need to create confidence in the system within government. So, you know, our colleagues know what we're doing, ministers know what we're doing, and there's this feeling that it's a project that's moving forwards under momentum. So that's quite important. The third sector is going to be a very important stakeholder group for us. And as I've touched on before, privacy interests. Now I know I got to speak to David briefly this morning. I meant to try and catch you, Matthew, on the way in, but I think you were running late and then you were surrounded by people at the break, so I couldn't get into you. You must be hot property.
No.
But one of the things...
We're a problem to be managed.
But one of the things we're really keen to do in terms of to deepen this engagement is to talk to individuals with privacy concerns. What are the concerns? Really drill down in far more depth that we can do in a quick question and answer session here. So we're talking about possibly developing meetings, workshops, going a bit more in depth and making sure that we have that feedback and we can really take on board, you know, what they are. I don't know yet what your concerns are, so I'm hoping that this engagement, and also you'll be able to draw from your contacts and bring them into the group. So if we take this room, every one of you from the stakeholder point of view has got great value for us as a team because you can bring a lot of information to us, particularly privacy groups and particularly those of you that represent citizen interests. Okay? The final thing, which is a key strand for us, will be equalities. Jess and Leona here are doing a specific piece of work that is around equalities, that is distinct from, but will work with this programme. So we're trying to cover all the bases we possibly can. So that talked a little bit about stakeholder engagement. We also have a very strong comms lead on this project, and that's Ross, who's standing over there. He's been doing filming and a lot of the behind the scenes organising. So going on the project moving forwards, we've had a lot of digital engagement anyway. There's regular posts, there's papers up all the time. We've already shared video on YouTube. We're filming today, so hopefully that will go up today or tomorrow. We're going to look at the potential for live streaming. Again, we want people to engage with the process. We're going to have to build this. In terms of an audience, in terms of a stakeholder audience, this isn't something that happens overnight. So once we get underway, I'm going to be asking for people to start sharing our information. So, you know, to let your groups know, to let people know about what we're doing, to retweet us, to follow us, to find out more. So, because the more people that get involved in this project, the better it will be as an end result, especially during this crucial alpha stage. So we'll be looking at other digital work. We're also looking at working with industry press, talking to individual stakeholders about their views and maybe publishing some of those views. So this will turn into quite a rich stream. Okay, I'm getting there at the end. The final part of this, and again, so good get to Ross, there's a huge commitment to open government. And we're working with the engaged team and others to shape the open government approach. Now, Ross's work on this has already been taken as an exemplar, and he's being asked to talk to other government departments now about how we work in open government and how that translates. So this is something we want to continue very strongly as a strand through this project. So I hope you've picked that up, that we really want to share everything we possibly can at the earliest possible stage. So our messaging, while being open, we'll try and make it bespoke, which is why we need your help in terms of who we want to talk to and what those messages might be. And Ross has developed a product vision which provides a detailed narrative, which basically talks about what we're trying to achieve with the programme. So he's going to take the stage now and have a quick chat through with that. And shortly after that, Jess is going to introduce a bit of a workshop. We're going to actually make you work for your coffee and biscuits. So we'll get some feedback there.
There within the paper you've got today, you'll find our product vision. So again, within the spirit of open government, we felt this was an important document to share with you all. This is our resource that we've created for use within the team, really to set some limits for what it is that we're trying to do, given the, as you see this morning, we're covering a vast amount of ground. So the wording that's in there, I'm not going to go through it line by line, but certainly we would invite you all to have a look at it in your own time. And we're really pleased to be able to share with you today. So again, take time to look at it later on. But really the three areas that it seeks to break down are identifying what the product that we as a team are working towards delivering, what that product is and why it's different from other things that are out there, and then also just 3 or 4 key questions that we've sort of developed and answered to. So the forthcoming workshop that Jess is going to introduce, we would invite you to get an opportunity to share any feedback that you've got on this or anything else you've heard through Ray's presentation, and we'd love to hear your views, and by all means come and say hello to either of us afterwards.
Maria's already outlined the value we place on communications and your input into what we're doing. So what we would like you to do is maybe have a think about the strategy that we put to you, the proposals, and we've got a few questions here that we thought might stimulate discussion in the tables. So they